They say humiliation is quiet. It happens in whispers, sideways glances, polite smiles that hide cruelty. But on this day, humiliation echoed across marble floors, bounced off polished counters, and stopped an entire bank cold. Because what started as an elderly black woman being dismissed, belittled, and publicly embarrassed by a powerful institution, ended with a lawyer's arrival that flipped power, exposed decades of buried truth, and reminded everyone watching: never confuse silence for weakness. This is her story. Mrs. Evelyn Carter was 73 years old when she walked into the Midtown Federal Bank on a rainy Tuesday morning. She moved slowly, leaning gently on a worn wooden cane. Her coat was neat but old, her shoes polished but clearly repaired more than once. Gray curls peeked from beneath her headscarf, and her hands, dark, trembling slightly, clutched a small leather purse that had seen better decades. To most people inside the bank, she was invisible. The teller line buzzed with impatience. Suits checked watches. Phones vibrated. A security guard eyed her suspiciously as she approached the counter. When it was finally her turn, the young teller barely looked up. His nameplate read, Daniel Whitmore, Senior Teller. Evelyn cleared her throat softly. "Good morning, son," she said politely. "I'd like to make a withdrawal." Daniel sighed. "Account number?" he asked flatly. She slid a folded slip of paper across the counter. Daniel typed, frowned, then looked up. This time really looked at her. His expression changed. "This account has a balance error," he said loudly enough for others to hear. Evelyn blinked. "That can't be right. I've had that account for over 40 years. Daniel smirked. "Ma'am, do you even understand what kind of bank this is?" The line behind her grew quiet. "I'm just trying to withdraw what's mine," she replied, voice steady but soft. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Your balance is substantial," he said, disbelief dripping from his tone. "Frankly, I don't think you belong in this branch." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with thinly veiled curiosity. Evelyn felt heat rise to her face, but she did not raise her voice. "I deposited funds last week," she said, "from an inheritance." Daniel laughed. "An inheritance?" he repeated. "From where? The lottery?" The security guard took a step closer. Daniel shook his head theatrically. "I think we need to freeze this account until we verify the source. Too many scams these days." Freeze. That word hit Evelyn like ice water. "Sir," she said quietly, "you don't have the authority." "Yes, I do," Daniel snapped. "And unless you want to cause a scene, I suggest you step aside." He pressed a button. The screen flashed red. Account temporarily restricted. The humiliation was complete, and Daniel thought that was the end of it. He had no idea. It was only the beginning. Evelyn stepped away from the counter slowly, her dignity intact even as her heart pounded. People avoided her eyes now. That familiar feeling crept in, the one she'd known her whole life. Being questioned, being doubted, being made to feel like she didn't belong in rooms she helped build. Because Evelyn Carter wasn't just an old woman. She was a survivor. In 1968, she'd been denied a mortgage because of her skin color, despite having the income. In 1982, her husband's business loan was rejected while white competitors were approved with worse credit. She remembered sitting at kitchen tables late at night, balancing checkbooks by candlelight, saving pennies so her children could go to college. She remembered promises broken by institutions that smiled in public and discriminated in private. This bank? She helped fund it. Evelyn had been part of a class action settlement decades earlier, one involving discriminatory lending practices that Midtown Federal had quietly buried. The payout was substantial, invested carefully over time. Generational wealth protected and grown. And now frozen by a teller who saw only her age, her skin, her coat. Evelyn walked to a chair near the entrance and sat. She did not cry. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Old, cracked, but functional. She dialed one number. It rang once. "Ms. Carter," a confident voice answered. "Is everything all right?" Evelyn smiled softly. "James, I need you to come to the bank. There was a pause. Which bank? Midtown Federal. Another pause. Then, I'm on my way, he said. Do not leave. Across the lobby, Daniel watched her suspiciously. Security, he muttered. Keep an eye on her. He felt powerful, important, untouchable. After all, he was the gatekeeper, or so he thought. 20 minutes later, the glass doors opened. Conversation stopped. A tall black man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped inside. His shoes gleamed. His posture commanded space without asking permission. He carried a leather briefcase and wore an expression that suggested he already knew everything. The security guard straightened. Daniel frowned. The man approached Evelyn first. Ms. Carter, he said warmly, kneeling slightly to her eye level. I'm sorry you were treated this way. Evelyn took his hand. Thank you for coming so quickly, James. He stood and turned toward the counter. The temperature in the room shifted. Daniel forced a smile. Sir, can I help you? James placed his briefcase on the counter and opened it slowly, deliberately. My name is James Holloway, he said clearly. Senior partner at Holloway and Finch. Civil rights litigation. Daniel's smile faltered. I represent Mrs. Evelyn Carter, James continued, and I'd like to know why her account was frozen without legal cause. Daniel laughed nervously. We're just verifying funds. James raised an eyebrow. Without a suspicious activity report? Without compliance approval? Without notifying the account holder in writing? Silence. Other customers leaned in. James slid a document across the counter. Do you recognize this? He asked. Daniel glanced at it and went pale. It was a settlement agreement. One Midtown Federal had sworn never to acknowledge publicly. This bank, James said calmly, was found guilty of systemic discrimination in lending and deposits. Mrs. Carter was a named plaintiff. Her account is protected under federal oversight. Daniel swallowed hard. You froze it anyway, James continued, voice now steel, which constitutes retaliation. The branch manager rushed over. What's going on? She asked sharply. James turned to her. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the FDIC, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and a civil lawsuit for discrimination, emotional distress, and unlawful account restriction. The manager looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, and for the first time saw power. The manager's face drained of color. Unfreeze the account, she whispered to Daniel. I can't, he stammered. James leaned closer. Do it, now. Daniel's fingers shook as he typed. Count restored. Collective breath swept through the lobby. James wasn't finished. Also, he said, we'll need surveillance footage, internal communications related to this account, and your discrimination training records. The manager nodded quickly. Of course, we'll cooperate fully. Daniel's knees buckled. He grabbed the counter. This is ridiculous, he muttered. I was just doing my job. James turned sharply. No, he said. You were abusing discretion based on bias. Evelyn stood then, slowly, but firmly. She walked to the counter. I never asked for special treatment, she said. Only respect. Her voice carried. And you couldn't give me that. Daniel couldn't meet her eyes. Customers whispered. Phones recorded. The bank that once made her feel small now felt very, very exposed. Within days, the story went viral. Bank accused of discriminating against elderly black woman. Internal emails leaked. Training gaps exposed. Daniel was suspended pending investigation. Midtown Federal issued a public apology. Then came the lawsuit. Evelyn didn't seek revenge. She sought accountability. The settlement funded scholarships for minority students in finance and law. Mandatory bias training was implemented across the company. Oversight committees were installed. Daniel resigned quietly. The bank changed because it had to. Weeks later, Evelyn returned to the bank. This time, she was greeted by name. The same lobby, the same marble floors, but everything felt different. Power had shifted. She completed her transaction calmly, then turned to leave. Before exiting, she paused. "Never judge a book by its cover," she said softly, and walked out, head held high. This story isn't just about a bank. It's about what happens when people mistake age for weakness, silence for ignorance, dignity for submission. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. And when it arrives, it makes the room go quiet, because respect is not optional. And underestimating the wrong person comes with consequences. Justice was served. If you felt the weight of her story, if you believe in seeing justice done, then don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because here, every story matters, every struggle is real, and every voice deserves to be heard. Join us and witness the triumphs, the fights, and the truths that make the world take notice.